Enjoy a seat at the table and good company, where great conversations and meaningful discussions happen.
Welcome to And Good Company. I'm Sarah Fiedelholtz. We all know a great dinner party isn't really about the food. It's about the people seated around the table engaging in lively discussions. And Good Company gives you a seat at the table to enjoy smart and interesting conversations as they happen. I am pleased to be in the company of Brenda Gerber Vincent, the Vice President of Community and Corporate Impact at Greater Fort Wayne, Inc. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I'm glad to be here.
So I want to start off a little bit about talking about your background.
Okay.
And how you got to Greater Fort Wayne, Inc.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about the story of your and what your background and what you thought you would be doing and you know what kind of careers path you wanted.
Great question. I'm actually a fourth generation Fort Wayne native. And in high school, I was really embarrassed by that. I was like, no, I just wanted to be anywhere but here. And then my love for our community just grew. I made the intentional decision just to go to Indiana University because I wanted to stay in Indiana. It was a decision I made and a decision I'm glad that I did. But I've actually lived in 7 different metros across the United States. So I've lived in some really big cities. And each time I've come back to Fort Wayne. And I realized these are my people, these are my buildings, these are the programs, and these are the people that I want to surround myself with. So I'm here to stay. But when I first started out, I went to Indiana and I went to Capitol Hill. And truth be told, I thought at this point in my career that I would be a United States Senator, that I would be walking in on the steps of the Capitol. And I really thought, because I'm really into public policy, and I really feel like that's how things get done in our country. It's still a dream. There's still that fire in my belly that maybe someday that would come true, but I've never forced anything to happen. But if those doors would open, I wouldn't be afraid to walk through.
I didn't think that we would use this. I didn't think I would ask you this question so early in the
Yes.
but you opened the door.
Okay.
So, the 2 years, the mayorship is going to be open, and it would be very nice to have a woman mayor in Fort Wayne. Is it something that you would consider as the stepping stone to the...
Oh, you know what? It's always something that I would consider. I love this community. It's no secret that I want to leave a legacy, that this community is better, by some contribution, some small contribution.
But you're very intentional. I mean, in everything that you do, the organizations that you participate in, I mean, the role that you've taken at Greater Fort Wayne Inc. But I mean, there is going to come a time sooner or later that you are going to have to decide you'll throw your hat in the ring for it.
Right, and as you mentioned, it's about timing. And when I feel, if and when the timing is right.
But do you think that Fort Wayne is ready for a woman mayor?
Past ready.
Okay.
Yes, definitely ready.
So
for
in your
mayor.
inner circle with your family and what your own kitchen cabinet kind of thing, has it come up?
Sure it has. It's come up for years. I mean, there's been certain opportunities that have opened, whether they be on city council or whether it be, a run for the mayor. I've seen the inside of that. I actually worked on Paula Hughes' campaign when she ran for mayor, so I got to see from behind the scenes. And it was something that energized me. It excited me.
Right.
And I feel like my time in Indianapolis at the State House has prepared me. But the real reason that I would run is that I felt the timing was right and that I could make a difference.
Okay. And do you feel that now?
You know what? I don't know if the timing is right for me.
Really? You mean personally or just in terms of your own professional path?
I will say that I feel like my best years are ahead of me.
Yeah.
I feel like I have gathered all of this information. I feel that I'm able to contribute at a level because I've had lots of experiences, and now I can use that to make a real impact. So I'm not ruling anything out. I'm just not sure what that next path is going to look like.
Well, because I think if you got the 51% of the population in Fort Wayne are women,
yes, they are.
I mean, that would be, and you do a lot. I mean, but when you said to yourself, you really see yourself in a political public life, how did you, because I think sometimes for women especially, they don't think about the intentional path to building that. What are the steps you've taken and how do you feel that what you're doing now, like at Greater Fort Wayne Inc., continues to help you on that path?
Well, you know what, to be, again, I go back to my love of the community. It's what drives me.
Okay.
Whether I'm an elected official or someone in our community just trying to do good work, at the end of the day, if I'm making a difference and making impact, I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing. I don't need to be an elected official to do that. And I definitely think that I can influence what I say from the back seat.
Right.
That you can have great influence and get a lot done from wherever you sit.
Okay.
But I know that the work that I'm doing now is preparing our community for generations to come, whether it be my work through United Front, whether it's economic development, whether it's creating leaders through Leadership Fort Wayne, whether it's connecting corporate leaders with entrepreneurs. I mean, all of the things that I do are very intentional to set up our region for success, again, for years and years down the road.
What is it that you like so much about Fort Wayne?
It just runs in my blood. And I think a lot of people will say that. I think there's a magnet that actually sits under our city because people are drawn. Obviously, they're drawn. The #1 fastest growing metro in a 5-state region. People are drawn to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I always say it is definitely not the oceans and the mountains, right?
Right.
It's the people.
But partly I think that where I think there is like sort of a rift happening is, in some ways, everybody talks about how Fort Wayne is changing, and if we want attracting new people and people who aren't from here to move here, but there's still this sort of the old way of doing things and thinking about Fort Wayne, and the new way, because I always say that Fort Wayne likes its history,
right,
but it's got to get over its past. There's a difference between history and past. The history is what created and built Fort Wayne.
Right.
The past is like when I would say to people, that I moved here, and they would say, "Oh, well, it's so much better than it used to be," or "There's so many more restaurants." And eventually, after so many people would say this to me, I would get a little facetious and say to someone, "So what exactly should I do with this piece of information? Should I think that you should enjoy the spoils of Fort Wayne now more because you endured it when it wasn't so great, or should I just feel sorry for you that you stayed when it wasn't so great?" And so I think as Fort Wayne wants to move forward, it's got to disconnect itself with that past and that sort of belief. Like when you meet people, I have found that invariably in Fort Wayne, within the first 3 questions, someone's going to ask you where you went to high school.
Right.
Well, if you're trying to get a majority of people who are not from here, that's no longer a relevant question. So how do we reconcile these sort of, and make it so that it is truly welcoming and inviting this talent, but also getting the sort of old guard to sort of see, like I joke that everybody who's on city council needs to come down to the landing on a Saturday night, because when you go to that landing on a Saturday, it looks nothing like what anybody thinks Fort Wayne was or is to this point in time. Right. That to me is the new Fort Wayne, because the diversity and the mix of ages and people from all over, and I'm there all the time because I live right around the corner. I'm like, this is what people need to see for themselves, and really then they will understand where this city is going. So how do you feel that we can do that?
Yeah, there's so many things I want to pull apart in that. I'll start by saying that I think that communities, no matter their size, always have that tension between the past and the present. When our 20-year-olds in our community are 50 and the new 20-year-olds are coming up from behind them, we will always have this dialogue between the past and the present. And I feel that tension is good. I really do. I think that I look at these young leaders in our community, I'm inspired by them.
Are we doing a good job, though, of building the bench for young leaders?
I think we are. I mean, I'll talk about a program. When you talk about the landing and the energy, just the pure energy of walking through, my husband and I will go down there, and then we'll walk Promenade Park. And I don't have this feeling of I have this feeling of, I grew up here.
Right.
This feeling of this is what I always thought it could be. And we're finally there. We have a long way to go.
Right.
But we're moving in that direction, and I feel like we're all moving in that direction. I was at a Greater Fort Wayne Inc. launched a program called Onboard last year.
Right.
We had an event at the zoo we welcomed, I think it was something like 40 newcomers to our community last night at the zoo. Each have a community connector, that's somebody that's from here, that's like a personal navigator. It's like their first friend.
Right.
So we're intentionally trying to accelerate not only their connections, but their love of our city. Because once we get them here, we have to retain them.
Right.
So keeping them here is super important. I think we'll always have it. You know, I think we'll also have those people who sit back. I can remember when we were going to build the Parkview Field. I can remember protesters. I can remember, you know, front page news stories where this was going to ruin our city, and we had a perfectly good stadium out at Coliseum. And, and now those same people who were protesting now take credit.
Well, I also think that partly what I feel about Fort Wayne, and you know, I've been involved in the community now for 4 years. I've lived here for a year and a half now. Is a lot of Fort Wayne is about mediocrity. Like, it's good enough. Like, we had a good enough stadium. Like, it's, you know, what we're doing, it's good enough, you know, instead of really wanting to excel and not live in mediocrity, but achieve excellence and not settle, you know. And sometimes I feel like people here sort of feel like they settled living here, like they, whatever it is, reality.
You need to hang out with my friends.
Yeah. Well, no, but
because I think that, you know, like, you know, the people that I have surrounded myself with, they want more. They want restaurants from all over the country. They want different, you know, ideas for shopping and boutiques, and they're not going to quit, right? I mean, we're constantly getting ideas of who people want brought to our community, and we're going to go out and we're going to
But I think the challenge, though, is retaining them.
Absolutely.
Because that's personally what I see. I mean, you know, I moved here for a position, and then I was laid off for that position. And so, you know, it's been a year, and obviously, you know, I've done some things, but in terms of being able to keep me, I don't know if I can, because I don't know if it is as welcoming and open and sort of willing to, you know, I mean, welcoming someone and having someone introduce you to the community or tell me where I could get my hair cut and stuff like that is one thing. But helping me really navigate and sort of be able to go through on a business standpoint, or people wanting to hear different ideas, or you know, or not doing things the way they've always been done, or even just getting, ironically, a seat at the table. It's not so easy. And at some point you have to say, am I hitting my head against a wall? Is it really worth it? Where I could go, you know, personally, the struggle, because, I mean, I've been very successful in major cities. And here and I don't know if it's because it's smaller and therefore it is more insular, or what it is or if it is this conflict between the past and the present, so I'm curious, you know, about how you also navigated that, one, for yourself, but two, as a strong, opinionated woman, which in sometimes, and I think with some in Fort Wayne, that's not necessarily, you know, what people want at the table. So I'm curious of how you feel about some of these things that I'm sort of pointing out or feeling.
Yeah, no, you know, I wasn't actually listening to respond to you. I was actually listening to learn, because listening to you say, here we are, we have this really smart, you know, driven woman in our community wanting to make a difference. And when I hear you say, I don't necessarily feel like I can make it here, we have to figure out what that looks like to keep you here. I don't have all the answers.
No, I mean, neither do I.
Yeah, I mean, but we have to look at that. Like, I don't really have like this packaged response. And I wasn't really looking to respond to that, other than to listen and to say we can do better. Like, we have to do better.
But I'm wondering if you feel the same thing that sometimes I feel. And I felt it not only here, but this idea of smart, go-getter, opinionated women, okay, who are doers. I think sometimes, and this is part of the whole issues with women and where we are, they're not as necessarily welcomed at the table, or they think, oh no, you know, what's she going to say now? And, you know, and so obviously, as one of these women who has forged ahead in this community and isn't afraid to say what she thinks and make things happen, how do you as a woman deal with that?
I think this is a great time for women. I think that a woman or a leader, I will say of my age, I can remember when I first got out of school, and I wasn't even, like, I was invited to the meeting, but I was seated in in a chair along the wall, not even at the table. And every time I would be asked, like, will you take the minutes? And I'm like, no, like, I take horrible minutes. Like, Bill is great. His penmanship is even better than mine is. But I can remember never feeling like I wasn't either smart enough or capable enough to be at the table. I always felt like I deserved to be at the table. And I don't know whether that's boldness or just being naive, but I never felt like I walked into a room and didn't feel like I could contribute or add value, or that I had something that would be something that I could add to a project or a program.
So when you came back, so in Fort Wayne, give me the projection, sort of the blueprint of your career.
My career? So I graduated from Indiana University and I went to Capitol Hill. I worked for then Congressman, he was a junior congressman, Dan Coates. As an intern, I loved that. I loved working for him because I had access not only to him, but to Senator Lugar. I say that I've had access to some of the greatest leaders on the globe. I really, really cool leaders. So working for Congressman Coates, access to Senator Lugar. I was in Senator Lugar's office a lot. I knew his staff. He had just written his second book. He was somebody that I very much looked up to. I worked on the gray market issue. It's the standardization of foreign cars into the United States. I will say it was the most boring job I've ever had in my life, but I was in the markup committees. And from there, Randy Tobias, another great, what I would say, global leader. He was the youngest CEO of a Fortune 500 company at AT&T. He hired me, and I was working in Basking Ridge, New Jersey, and I desperately wanted to get back to the Midwest. That's kind of the pattern of my life. And I then transferred to Chicago. I was lucky enough that I served on the very first marketing team with the Chicago Bulls. So the Chicago Bulls partnered with AT&T for the first ever corporate sponsorship ever in the history of business. So now it's commonplace. I don't think you'd even do something without a corporate partner.
What year was that? Were you with the Bulls?
Gosh, now you're going to make me say out loud.
Just in the early 80s?
No,
I mean, in the height of
it was in the middle 80s.
Okay.
It was probably 84,
Were
85.
they winning? So do you have rings if you were on
I
the
don't.
Oh.
Matter of fact, we were the I don't know, well, I'm going to age myself again, but it was the breakup of the Bell system.
Right.
So people were having to choose their long distance company.
Yes, and there was the one with the red ring. That was the one with the coffee ring. Yeah. I forgot what that was called, but.
So AT&T had every halftime. So we did the long distance shootout. So that's what I got to do.
Okay.
So we did the long distance shootout. We would pick people to come and shoot free throws and who could shoot the long distance.
But was this when the Bulls, was this the Michael Jordan?
This is Michael Jordan. I actually played golf with Michael Jordan. So that was my claim.
But you weren't, because because I have a friend who was part of the marketing team at the Bulls.
Okay.
And everybody in the organization, when they won, gets a ring.
I didn't get a ring.
Oh.
I don't have any rings. No.
Oh, too bad. But you got to play golf with him.
Well, and you know what? I actually got to do 2 national commercials, and that was fun.
Okay.
So there were some definite perks that came. I was on the floor of every game that I was there during the 2 years I was there.
And then you came back again, or?
Then I came back again, and then I met my then first husband.
Okay.
I was married for 23 years. So married to him. He was a professional golf instructor. He taught at some of the best courses in the country, and that's what took me to the different 7 metros. So we left there and went to Ohio. From Ohio, I followed him. I left AT&T. I had 2 children, 2 beautiful children. And then I went from, I'm having to think about this. I went to Ohio. We lived 3 different cities, Jupiter, Orlando, and Vero Beach in Florida.
Right.
Lived in the Hamptons. I've lived in Chicago. I've lived all over, so some big metros to compare. I was living in Atlanta. And I made the decision then to come back to Fort Wayne. So I came back to Fort Wayne and found myself single, and that was okay. And made my way. I was by profession. I'm a professional fundraiser. That's kind of like what I do. But I find that applies to so many things. So many things.
Well, because if you can convince people to open their wallets,
exactly,
you can convince people to do a lot of things.
Well, you can.
Because that is one of the hardest things to be able to do.
And I love it. And I never, I've never had any, and I think that for me, I've gotten to do 3 types of fundraising. I've done university fundraising, nonprofit fundraising, and political fundraising. So it's kind of the trifecta of fundraising. And for me, it helped me not to burn out, because the donors in each of those categories are very different, very different. So you can kind of go in and out of those different categories. but did some political fundraising. Was with, as I mentioned earlier in the interview, that I was with Paula Hughes, and we had so much fun. We ran a race, and we worked hard. We worked really hard, and in the end came up short. But after that, I always talk about the train stopping. The train stops abruptly, and you got to get off. And I just wasn't sure what I was going to do. And at that time, I received a call from then Congressman Pence. And he was making a run for governor for the state of Indiana and was asked to come and join their team as the deputy finance director, and worked for then Congressman Pence. He then won the governorship and became Governor Pence, and then brought me on to his administration. And I was chief of staff.
Oh, wow.
To First Lady Karen Pence.
Wow.
So I served in the administration and learned a lot, and really it was fun to be at the State House and living in Indianapolis, but knew that I wanted to come back to Fort Wayne.
You didn't want to, necessarily, when you saw the trajectory that he was on, you didn't want to ride that train?
I didn't. I wanted to come home. I wanted to come back to Fort Wayne. Matter of fact, when the election was over, I was coming back to Fort Wayne, and when they asked me to serve in the administration as chief of staff, that was something that I felt like it was an honor to be even considered, and then asked. Took the job and then stayed down there, and then came back to Fort Wayne. But the First Lady kept me on a foundation that she had formed, so I was part of the foundation, still very much involved. And
what foundation was that?
The First Lady's Foundation.
Okay.
And she raised money for nonprofits across the state. And she really, what she wanted to do was just shine a light on the different nonprofits and the great work they were doing across all 92 counties. And she gave either $500 scholarships or $1,000 scholarships. It was just a way that she could use her platform in a very public way. So she was a terrific First Lady.
And then,
of our state.
And then you got to, is that how you got to Greater Fort Wayne Inc., or no?
No, I came back.
Okay.
I came back. I took a job in the social service industry. So I was an officer, development officer. And then from there made the decision that I would go to Greater Fort Wayne Inc., and I have not looked back.
And so it's been what, 3?
I've been there 2.5 years.
2.5 years, yeah.
It's by far the most fun I've ever had in a job. It feels purposeful, it feels exciting, it feels results driven, and it feels like we're making a difference. And matter of fact, I was sitting at the zoo yesterday watching monkeys and thinking, this is part of my job.
Right.
I was welcoming all these newcomers.
Well, you can learn a lot about from monkeys. So.
Yeah, just learning all kinds of new things, and then really listening to our newcomers last night. What is important to you? What can we do to help you accelerate your connection here, especially in the disabilities community? You know, if a family moves here and has a child, or they themselves have a disability, regardless of what it is, we can help accelerate those connections right out of the gate. Instead of having a family move here and really trying to navigate all the resources, we can actually connect them right out of the gate.
And with that group that you had last night, what was the impetus for the majority of them to move here? And what did they say were some of the things that they felt that they would like to see or need from the community?
Sure. Well, you know, we had Martez who came here with Purdue Fort Wayne, the new diversity officer there. We have Dr. Walker. Dr. Crystal Walker was there last evening, and she's here from California, and she was brought by a job with Sweetwater. So thank you, Chuck.
Those are the two new diversity and inclusivity officers, right?
Correct.
That they both have. For Sweetwater, it's the very first time that they've had one.
Right.
For Purdue, did they have that position?
See,
no,
I don't
they didn't. They created it similar to Indiana Tech. They created that position too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So terrific. I mean, thank you, Purdue Fort Wayne.
Right.
Thank you, Sweetwater and Chuck, for bringing these great leaders from around the country who are bringing best practices to our community. And there's a woman named Sarah, and she's here with a job from the league. There were people from New York, Wisconsin. I'm going to say 2 from California, Texas.
And so what did they say that they need in the...
Really, they have said, and this, Rick, the new CEO at, I always mess up his last name, but Schneiderman.
Okay. CEO
of the zoo.
Okay.
He and his wife are here from California.
That's right, yep. He used to work for SeaWorld.
Yes.
Okay.
I hope I didn't get his last name
That's
wrong.
okay.
So they are here. He has been amazing. We had our first, what we call onboard Fort Wayne program during the pandemic, so we were on Zoom. So we had all these boxes filled of newcomers. We all shared our stories and where they were from and why they were here. And his wife is something, like her story is a little bit similar. She's like a fourth generation of the community she lived in California, said she would never leave. This opportunity came, and Rick and his wife, and I talked to Rick last night for a while at the zoo, and he just said, we've been overwhelmed by the kindness that people have shown us by living in this community. We feel a connection that in some ways we haven't felt, like even in our own communities. I mean, Rick is just, he's embraced what we do here. And his wife, I mean, to see them both last night, and they have friends, and they're 6 months out of the gate.
Right.
You know, I envision, and he said that that this doesn't happen in other communities. We were talking about, when you move to other communities, you kind of just have to find your own way. And I think here we've created a path for success. Fingers crossed. We can make sure that this is an environment, like you kind of pointed out before, that they can find their lane to succeed,
right,
no matter what lane it is, no matter what they want to contribute, that there's a place for them to do that.
And do you think that, because one of the things that they have to look at is if you recruit somebody for a job here, if their significant other or spouse does not feel acclimated or within 4 to 6 months, they will not stay. So
Right.
it's not just for the person who can move for the position, but that significant other or spouse that we have to pay attention to.
Absolutely, and we're being very intentional about it. We actually call them the better half. And the better half is the person, and oftentimes they, like you said, they give up a job to move here. So what we've done is we've set up a resume portal. So if you're a member of Greater Fort Wayne Inc. and you've hired someone who brings the better half, not the trailing spouse, but the better half, and we accelerate their connection to the business community by putting their resume in a portal that all other businesses within Greater Fort Wayne Inc. can look at. So we really try to connect them to the business community just like we would the person who actually is moving here for the position.
So tell me a little bit about the purpose and role of Greater Fort Wayne Inc.
Greater Fort Wayne Inc., our purpose and our mission is to grow jobs, wages, and the economy. We are looking to become a nationally recognized economy, and it's happening. At one point, whether it be 6 months from now or a year from now, we're going to say we are a nationally recognized economy. We could probably already say that, but we want to keep pushing in that direction. But that's really our mission.
And what does that mean to be a national economy?
It means that we are recognized nationally as a metro that we're growing.
Okay.
We've had 4 consecutive years of growth.
Right, but we're talking it's not even 1% growth. It is growth, but it's not, we're not getting to this 1 million people. We've got a lot of hurdles to get there, but
we are outpacing the national average. The national average is only growing at 0.4%.
Right.
Fort Wayne, Allen County is growing at 0.8%. We are double the national average in growth. So we're comparing ourselves to metros all over the United States. And so we know that people are moving here and they're choosing to.
Okay.
So we're proud of that. So when we talk about 3 Amazon projects, moving here, we're perfectly located in the United States. As far as our central location. We're perfectly, the cost of living, and I don't want to dwell on that.
We're not. I'm not going to let you go there because it's not. That's a whole nother conversation.
It is another conversation.
It's not true. It's a misnomer, but we'll have that in a separate conversation.
I was just going to say, I should probably, as soon as I said it, I went, that's another conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole, because So let's go back to the idea of
part two.
But with Greater Fort Wayne Inc., it also, I feel like sometimes that its focus is on the bigger sort of issue of Allen County and Fort Wayne, but it's supposed to also serve as the chamber,
correct,
for smaller businesses and for the business community.
Right.
How does it reconcile these two sort of big economic development arm and then really being a chamber for the businesses here and not lose, obviously for the bigger companies, Sweetwater, Ash, they're easy. They don't get lost in Greater Fort Wayne. But for the little entities that really need the chamber, how does Greater Fort Wayne balance those two?
Sure. We're actually 3 different components. So we have the leadership arm, and when we merged, so it was economic development, the chamber, and the leadership arm for Leadership Fort Wayne. And so I would say there's 20 people. That's how many people are on staff at Greater Fort Wayne, Inc. Half of them are focused every single day on economic development. Half of them are focused on the chamber and meeting the needs of our entrepreneurs, all the way up to our big businesses. So we even have 2 people. We split the businesses where we kind of smaller businesses and then larger businesses. So we actually have one staff that wakes up every single day and that's their primary focus. And I think we do a good job of, as you say, like combining the 2, and it makes perfect sense to me, and it just works, because a lot of companies, like when I talk to somebody who owns a small lot, a car dealer lot, he said, I need more people to buy more cars.
Right.
My banks, whether it be a credit union or large banks, say I need more people to open up my credit.
Right.
So the economic development piece just fits perfectly in that space, because the more economic development we do, the more my small businesses grow. So they work hand in hand.
Okay. And are we doing the right kind of economic development? Because when people talk about the Amazon projects,
right,
that's a certain type of job. That's like an hourly wage job. And now, I just read that, the turnover of Amazon employees at like their factories and distribution centers is over 150%. And they actually have built their entire HR hiring process with an understanding that within a 3-month period, they will have such turnover. So I wonder, as much as we talk about, but those are hourly wage jobs. Is that the right type of economic development that we should be doing? Isn't it that we should be looking at bringing in more higher paying jobs, and then also for the economic, don't we have to also then worry about what percentage of our population has a bachelor's degree, and
all of that.
So,
and we're looking at that mix where the focus and the priority will always be bringing in high paying jobs. That's what we want.
Right.
It's what every city wants. That's what we're all after.
Right.
And so that economic, and Ellen Cutter, who's our Vice President of Economic Development, she can speak to this much better than I can. And when we speak about the Chamber and economic development, I oversee the Chamber side, and Ellen oversees the economic development side.
So you work closely with Ellen?
Very closely, very, very closely. And we overlap a lot because, as I mentioned before, they work with each other.
Right.
But they are working right now. We have in our pipeline, I think it's 19 different projects that they're working on. And it used to be that we would talk about economic development in terms of expansions.
Right.
Now we talk about them in terms of attractions.
Right.
How many projects that we attract. No, they're both expansions and projects. We want them both.
Right.
Because that's really a thriving economy. But we definitely want to focus on those attractions. And again, it's the priority.
And then also now economic development, it's not just about workforce, it's about quality of place.
Correct.
It's very, very important. And that sort of has shifted, and talk about how that has made Fort Wayne probably a little bit more appealing.
Absolutely. The quality of places, we talked about this on a call just 2 days ago, is that people are picking cities because of the city, not because of the job. Where I know that when I got out of college or when I was a young professional, I kind of went to where the job was. People, young leaders aren't doing that anymore. Families aren't doing that anymore. They're going to where they want to live, and then they're finding the kind of job that they want. But we have created an environment with Promenade Park, the riverfront, and we're just getting started. We're just getting started. I can't wait to walk into some of these new facilities, and we're talking 3 and 4 and 5 years down the road. This isn't 20 years out there.
Right.
These are happening.
Right.
These projects are going to happen. I think when people talked about the riverfront, I think it exceeded everybody's expectations, right? Because you said before, like, it's good enough.
Right.
Well, then you put a Promenade Park in there, and you put a Parkview Field. It elevates people's standards.
But that's a perfect example where I talk about the difference between history and past. People, the past thinking of Fort Wayne was that they needed to be protected and walled off from the rivers, that they were something dangerous, and so it was not integrated. But I understand waterfront property. I've lived, so what you also had to do was change the way people perceived the rivers and the riverfront, that it wasn't, and that's like with the Mama Joe project and really trying to treat the rivers and understand the vitality of the river and then building them and then incorporating them into a lifestyle.
Right.
But that you had to change that mindset.
Absolutely. And part of what I would say part of the problem, and again, I'm not an engineer, I'm just somebody who's lived here a long time.
Right.
You couldn't see the rivers. The only time you really saw the rivers is when you went over the bridge in front of Three Rivers Apartments. Then you could see the rivers. But when you're just driving around Fort Wayne...
No, because they were something to be walled off from and protected, and they built in the 90s all of those, sort of, breakers, so that, because from the flooding issues.
Right, and that was real.
Right, and then also people think because it's brown that it's dirty, but they don't realize that Fort Wayne water has won all kinds of awards and, is actually on a national scale, not just regionally, the quality of the water.
I've been in the water, and I'm still here. I've been to lots of boat races when I was young with the Three Rivers Festival. Now, obviously, we still have work to do. We're always going to have work to do. Even I entered into a discussion just yesterday when somebody said, I wish Electric Works was downtown. And I said, Electric Works is downtown. We have to change our thinking about what downtown looks like.
Right.
We have to expand our idea. As we continue to grow, downtown is going to grow.
Well, that's what I believe are these arbitrary, the first idea is this whole thing of quadrants, okay? Right. That is an urban planning issue. That is not how people think about where they live. Right. People think about where they live as a neighborhood, which is why I think we need to start branding and the identity of neighborhoods, and that will build your civic pride.
Absolutely.
And also, these arbitrary demarcations, because I still don't know where I am. I mean, I'm getting better, but I just drive around. And so, before I had Javier Mondragon on, I went to Mount Vernon Park because I wanted to see what Southeast looked like in these neighborhoods. And I was like, these are lovely little neighborhoods.
They are.
And, but people say, oh, you're not supposed to go past Pontiac or you can't go here. And I'm like, why? So you're absolutely right, because, I live downtown. And to me, downtown is everything around. Even because I don't really know when I'm going, even if I go to the grocery store and I have to take my car out. I think that's not where I think maybe it's not downtown is when I go to see people and they live in these development neighborhoods and stuff. But to me, Electric Works, it's a 7-minute walk from my house to, like Electric Works.
Well, I will agree with you, when you talk about the history, because we have been based on quadrants. And then West Central popped up, right? So West Central gave themselves a really cool name, and it's a really cool vibe. And when I say it, I have an actual response when I say West Central. Right.
And it builds, and that also helps with property values and civic pride. Yeah. I've been talking to Michael Galbraith at the Downtown Improvement District about that now they need to create a neighborhood association for downtown. Yeah. Because now you have, even though we're renters, you have people who are living in your downtown, which is completely new, and their needs and requirements and things are very different. And you need to bring them together so they have a voice, just like you have West Central. And that would help bring, downtown, because one of the things that's got to happen downtown is we've got to get more where people can buy. It cannot just be everything we're building is rentals. Right. And there's got to be, but the other thing that nobody looks at when you think about downtown, so you talk about newcomers, okay? So my apartment building has 72 apartments. Okay. 3 of the apartments are empty nesters. So those are people who sold their homes and wanted to experience downtown. Mm-hmm. 69 of the apartments, nobody is from Fort Wayne.
And that's a really cool thing.
But it also shows that we're not thinking that way. That how do we reach them? How do we engage with them? How do we, and they're all from all over, and they've come for all different reasons. And but the other thing you have to look at though is nobody from Fort Wayne would move into my building because when they see the rent, they're like, it's more than double what the average rent is in Fort Wayne. So the issue also becomes who can afford to live downtown. And that's also going to change this whole idea of cost of living. And because now you've got all these apartments coming online that are going to raise that average rent. So it's sort of like, it's a blessing and a curse.
Sure it is.
But we have to really think about both of those.
Absolutely.
It's great that all these people are not from Fort Wayne, but I'd also say it's a little bit of a concern that none of them are, are actually who are from Fort Wayne,
Right.
that kind of thing. So
Right.
I'm wondering, how do we, just like you have to balance the work of the chamber with Greater Fort Wayne and the economic development, how do we balance these kinds of you don't want to become, with gentrification, you don't want to push out people, you don't want to have it that housing is too much more expensive than what people are making. I mean, how do you see the role, how do we balance all of this kind of?
Well, there are people much smarter than
Right.
me.
And me, right? I'm just asking the question.
No. And matter of fact, I was just at Barry Sturgis's office, and we were talking about the downtown inventory. That same thing. Apartments versus condos. And thank goodness there's people way smarter than me that are figuring out.
Well,
that
because we need the
combination.
condos because we need the tax base.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean.
But when I talked to somebody, it was this week, but said to me, "Man, I'm having trouble getting through downtown. It's so crowded." And I went like, "Yes." So just take a deep breath. That's what we're building.
But it's not really
right?
crowded. I mean, when people, when people say about parking in downtown, I'm like, they don't understand. It's also that they're used to.
Sure.
And we have to. But like I said, if you want to see the new Fort Wayne, go to the landing on this, and you'll see
the vibrancy of
the diversity and the mix of ages and genders and ethnicities, and it's all, and that to me is, so if we want to continue moving forward,
right?
And
I'll tell you one. Can I expand on that?
Yeah.
For the very first time, we have site selectors, so they come to our communities and they're looking for different sites. And it's probably been a month ago now, we had our first site selector ask about our community's diversity programs. And it just thrilled me. Now businesses are not only looking for, the airport, education, utilities, roads, infrastructure. They're asking about...
Because that's that quality of place.
Exactly right.
So talk about that in terms of the involvement with United Front.
Yeah, well, I was invited, this goes back years. So my work on the United Front, the work actually started years and years ago. And it cut me off if I'm too long-winded. But when I was back in high school, I went to Snyder High School, and we went, speaking of high schools, but we were one of the very first high schools to have busing. So we had about 16 busloads of students, friends, that were bused in from the southeast side to Snyder every single day. And I was lucky because I lived during those years, and I have some very good friends to this day that came through that process. So what happened, though, is there was only one bus that went home, and that was at 2:45. One bus that took everybody home from Snyder after school. So if you wanted to be in the debate club, or the football team, or the cheerleading squad,
you couldn't.
You couldn't.
Right.
So here's what happened, and I was so aware of this at 16, 17, 18 years old, and most they had parents. If they had both parents, they both worked. They had one parent, maybe they had one car. Situation was different across the board. But I realized when I graduated from high school, I had a resume full because I could walk home. Mm-hmm. And if you compared my resume next to one of my friends' resumes, the typical person would look at that and think, lazy. They just didn't do anything in high school. No, the truth is the bus left at 2:45.
Or they had to have an after-school job.
And it was one of those things that impacted me greatly. Now, I found myself giving lots of rides home after school, right? So I was in those after-school activities, and my car would be filled, and I would be taking people home. I understood the disparity then, and I understood that the system was built that way. Because I guarantee you that if we were bused to the southeast side to go to school,
right.
First of all, it wouldn't have happened.
Well, I would disagree, because I was bused in Miami, Florida.
Okay.
So, and it was the same issue. Because where geographically I couldn't stay after school because there was one bus that took me home.
Yep.
So it's not only, these issues are
good
not.
to know.
It happens, it's not just because of socioeconomic issues. A lot of that had to do with geographic,
right?
Issues.
Yeah, but I just, but in my heart,
right.
That's what I held on to.
Okay, so
it wouldn't have been reversed, and had it been reversed, we would have found, there would have been several buses that would have left at 2:45 and at 4 and at 5 and at 6. Anyways.
Or they would have made sure that the public bus system.
I don't know. Yeah, I just felt
right.
and maybe I held that in my heart.
Right.
And it impacted me on a level that I got it.
Okay.
I really got it. And so fast forward life, I was invited out to, a lot happened during that time, but I was invited to the Aspen Institute, which is a global.
That was recently, yeah.
That was in February of 2019, long before George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd. So I say that because that was the delineation where people kind of got involved who wouldn't be involved or hadn't been involved. And I had been doing this work before that. And I was invited to this and to study race in America. Now, this is a global think tank. I was with people from all over the globe. I think I was the only person who maybe hadn't published a book, and I wasn't a professor at Harvard or Yale. And I questioned whether I belonged at the table. Like, was I smart enough? And so what I did is I went at a very intellectual level.
But you were invited. Right?
I was invited.
So how did you get invited?
I was invited by the executive director of the Global Institute, who I actually met right here in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
So why this? I'm going to interrupt you a second
Sure.
because I think this plays on the point about women at
Okay.
the table. If you were invited to be at that table, and this executive director knew who else was going to be at that table, why would you even question no man would question himself if he was smart enough or good enough to be at that table.
Yeah.
Why is it, with everything you've accomplished and your success, why is it that you felt you still question that?
Because at the very foundation of who I am white, I am conservative, I am from the Midwest, and
a woman.
And a woman. And I was invited to this table to talk about race in America. And again, like, those are the reasons I questioned it, because of those truths.
But isn't that valid enough for you to?
Well,
what I'm trying to get at
saying
is the issue that this is what women question all the time, and then they feel like this imposter syndrome. And what I'm trying to say is, here is a woman who everybody would see is very successful. I mean, look, you worked with the former vice president. You know, I mean, you're very savvy and you're very smart. And so my point is that when does it end for women?
Well, and I love this. I love the direction of this conversation. This would be a fun topic just to dive into. I felt like it was worthy. I accepted the invitation. I was going, but I overcompensated. That's what I did, is because I didn't feel, I had some question whether or not I could keep up intellectually. I went at it at a very intellectual level. I read 12 books, 12 books front to cover, and not just read them, but literally studied them.
Right.
I watched every documentary that even exists. I learned 400 years of history in about 4 months. I met with Black leaders in our community.
Now let's just see. All right, I'm gonna push you. What served you better? Your own personal experiences and stories, and being that white Midwest woman, okay, who had a sensibility of high school, or the person who read all these books and the academics.
That's my point. So I get there, and I'm sitting at the table. You can imagine. I mean, here's we're sitting across from each other. You sit in a circle. That's the Aspen Institute way, and everyone has to participate. And you put your name tag on its side, and you get called on. And I was delayed, and I knew I was going to have to speak.
Right.
And I said in class, I said, you know, I'm a little bit nervous. I was trying to be authentic because I wanted to be vulnerable. I wanted to approach this as if I didn't have all the answers, that I was there to learn. And it was a growth kind of participatory kind of attitude I was taking. And I said, I just don't want to say anything wrong. I'm worried that I'm going to say something wrong. And this woman across from me, who's now a friend of mine, she's a professor at Yale, she said, we don't really give a shit how you feel. And I realized at that moment, this wasn't about intellectual. This was about my heart. This had nothing to do with what I knew. Now, I will make a case that I think every person should understand the 400 years of history.
Well, how we got here.
That's
the difference again. I mean, the theme here is past versus history.
Yeah, I would challenge everyone to understand history.
Right.
So that served me well. When I got to the table, I understood.
But I think that your skills of understanding policy and understanding your community, and then your empathy, that's far greater.
It was, I brought, and so, you know, you question your value going in.
But why? Men don't.
Well, I wanted, because I think that I felt that this topic was so big. This topic was something that I not only wanted to contribute, but I wanted to learn. And I think that I left there and I realized, and I stayed up all one night, like literally,
You did it all night, like you were like cramming.
Well, no, I took notes because what I realized in that moment is that they didn't care what I thought. I mean, they didn't care what I had learned. They cared about who I was as a person. I added great value because I was a woman. I added great value because I was from the Midwest, and I was conservative.
Great value because
and
you
I was a Christian.
From an Ivy, right?
I mean, really, that was the value that I brought to the table. Right. So I'm still learning.
Right, I think that's what serves you well, truthfully. And I mean, I was pushing you on it because I have these issues about women, and it's like, you know, someone. You may not see it in yourself, but somebody invited you to the table, correct. So own your seat.
Right.
But I do have these issues of why with women, and we can continue to talk about that.
I would love to have a panel of women.
Yeah, no,
I would love to talk about that.
I really, because I have lots of issues about how with women, but I think that for you, in terms of your success, and you said something that you didn't even realize before we started, when I introduced you to Pastor Erdos, and we were talking about, and you said something about, I can't remember what it was, but what resonated to me was that you said, well, that's how my success. And what I realized was that you, first of all, you own your success and you recognize that you earn that. Yes. But you're also a person who's learning. Like you're always curious. You want to ask questions. You want to learn. You don't think you have the answers. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what sort of has helped you to be successful and will continue to help you be successful. Do you think that's a really, like, tell me what your
I feel like I know myself really well. That's one thing I know. And I know that I'm very intentional about how I spend my time and who I spend my time with and what I spend my time doing. And you also
get up very early. You're one of these Tim Cook people who believes you should get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I remember because there was one night I emailed you at like, I couldn't sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you responded, and I said, "What are you doing up?"
Those are my favorite hours of the day.
That's what you said, right?
My very favorite hours of the day.
But then I wanted to know. My next question was, "What time do you go to bed?"
I go to bed early. I bet I'm in bed by 9 or 9:30. Right. And sometimes I'll watch TV and fall asleep, but most of the time it's early. But those are my hours. My very favorite hours are between 4 and 7. Those are my favorite hours of the day.
And that's where you do whatever it is you're doing.
It's my thinking, my devotions, my, I don't know. It's just those hours. I ride a bike in the morning. So even today I was dragging, and I was on that bike and in my pajamas.
Right. So you do like.
I didn't even put on my workout clothes.
Oh, you did it in your pajamas. Wow.
I jumped on the bike.
Well,
I was too tired to put on my workout clothes.
Well, speaking of hours, this hour is almost up, believe it or not. So you're going to have to definitely come back, and we're going to come up with some other different panels and topics that we should cover here. But at the end of each And Good Company show, I ask guests the same 12 questions that French novelist Marcel Proust popularized in the Victorian parlor game. Okay. What is your favorite word?
Oh, I'm supposed to go fast.
No, what's your favorite word?
Is I love you one word?
Okay, we'll use it as one.
I love you.
Count it. What is your least favorite word?
That's how we've done it before.
Okay, so in your case, we'll say phrases.
Can we say phrases? Yeah. That's how we did it before.
Right, exactly. That's how it's always been.
That's how it's. That's my least favorite.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
So many different ways I could go there. I would say reading.
What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Negative. People or energy.
What sound or noise do you love?
The sound of my granddaughter.
I was going to say, because she's just, 4 months old now?
4 months old.
Yeah.
I literally watch one video where she's laughing over and over and over again.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Question. Can we pass and come back?
You can't pass.
Oh, I can't pass. Didn't know that was a rule. Okay, what noise do I hate? I don't know. Okay. I can't come up with an answer.
All right. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I'll go back to United States Senator.
Okay. What profession would you not like to do?
Statistical analysis professor. I would feel sorry for my students.
What do you consider your greatest achievement?
Oh, my 2 children.
Who, living or dead, would you most like to have a conversation with?
My brother Chad.
Is he still living?
He is not. He died at the age of 29.
Oh, wow. How would you like to die?
So many different directions I can go here. With a sense of purpose.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Heaven does exist, and I want to hear good and faithful servant. Well done.
Well done.
Oh, that's going to make me cry.
Well done. And I am very serious that we will have an offline conversation and plan out some more
That'd be
conversations.
terrific. I would enjoy that. This went way too fast.
Yeah, it goes very fast. But
way too fast.
But
I love that we covered economic development, women's issues, United Front.
I always say that women are not only multitaskers, but multi-talkers.
Yeah.
And so we have the ability to cover lots of different topics in a short period of time.
Thank you for creating this platform.
Oh, well, thank you. And you can learn more about And Good Company and all the other great conversations we have had at andgoodcompany.info. And we look forward to next week when you can again enjoy a seat at the table for great conversation and good company.